Hey everybody, we're here. We had a technical difficulty, so we're coming live at a different link than we had planned, but we're still here. We're going to be talking about AI. We'll be talking about how we're using it and give some advice on how to maybe get a little more out of it if you're using ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, and why using sort of third-party specialized SaaS products might not be as good as just learning how to use ChatGPT for yourself. If you're new to the stream, hi, I'm Jesse. I'm a podcast editor, engineer, coach, AI consultant, and like I said, we're going to be leaning into that AI side of things today. With me, as always, we have Matthew Bliss. Let me switch over to him.
Hello, how's it going? Yes, Matthew Bliss, podcast engineering, production extraordinaire, looking to branch out into coaching consulting. I've been an avid podcast maker since 2020 and a fledgling AI for content creation user. It will be very interesting to have a chat about the different ways and things that we use with podcasting and for content creation in general, because I think there's a lot of ways that people use this stuff, use the AI, and just don't get what they should out of it. I think automation at the expense of creation is how I'd very quickly and easily describe what that would be like. But I should say too, before we quickly move into the discussion, is that for the last couple of weeks I've been teasing the release of a new podcast from me that more closely aligns to what I want to do in my business and the way that I want to approach podcasting and the internet and help people ask better questions in the podcasting world. And I released the trailer for it last week. So if any of you are interested to come along on the podcast journey with me, if not here every Tuesday, you can subscribe to Rethinking Podcasting on any audio podcast platform that your podcasts can be had. So if you're curious to hear what that will be about, I'd be very interested for you to subscribe, have a listen to the trailer, and wait for episodes to drop. They should be week on week, starting next week, is my plan. But as we know, as with today, not everything goes to plan. So yeah, Jesse, let us, after that terrible self-promotion, get stuck into the AI stuff.
Okay, so AI, it's here. It's not going away. I think a lot of us are now starting to accept that. Some of us have already embraced it, and some of us, we're still fighting it. We don't want to, I guess maybe we feel threatened that it's going to take work away, that's going to replace us, and those are legitimate concerns. But no matter what happens in the future, it's still a skill I strongly feel is worth learning. And that's one of the key things. It is a skill. It's something we have to learn how to use. It's really like anything else. Both of us are podcast editors. We don't just become good podcast editors by just deciding one day, I'm going to be a podcast editor. Using Descript doesn't make you a podcast editor, or a good one, rather. There's a lot of skill that needs to be gained in order to know when Descript is doing good, when it's missing the mark. And that's the biggest thing I can't stress enough. It's difficult to use AI and get good outputs if you don't know what a good output looks like or sounds like. It's like anything else. We're audio people. We're going to hear when Descript makes a bad cut. Someone who isn't an audio editor or someone who pays close attention to audio, they might not pick up on those little things. Same thing with writing. A lot of us have read really blatantly obvious AI writing. Some people don't notice the difference. And that's where it really comes into play. We have to, if we're going to use, say, ChatGPT to write stuff for us, we have to know what good writing looks like, or we're going to put out stuff that isn't that good and is going to be obvious as AI content. And that is the worst thing for us. I see it on LinkedIn all the time. You see this big long post, it has an emoji on every line, it's formatted a very specific way. That tells me this was done by AI. I'm not even going to pay attention to it. And I'm guessing a lot of other people have picked up on these little tells and just dismiss everything you just put out. We wasted a lot of natural resources on a post that no one is going to read. And let's just talk about that for a minute without getting sidetracked too much. Yes, AI uses natural resources. So does Facebook. So does YouTube. Any cloud-based SaaS product is using natural resources. They've got data centers everywhere. This isn't new to AI. I've just heard a bunch of people talking about how AI uses a bottle of water for every prompt you give it, or every time you press enter. And that's not even close to the truth, but it does use some water and natural resources. I'm sure they'll figure that stuff out. I read an article where one of Google's prototype models saved like 1% of their energy usage. And I want to say that was like equivalent to a data center the size of Texas. So that's a pretty significant savings. AI is going to help reduce the amount of resources needed. But that's kind of a different topic. Let's get to how we're using it. Matt, how are you using, what's the biggest way you're using AI right now?
For me, I would describe my use of AI as supervising a dumb intern. I would say that I don't really give it a lot of carte blanche to generate creative for me at the moment. So in full context, I will use AI, LLM stuff for what I use. Generally, ChatGPT and some sort of transcription tool to create the subject matter in textual language for ChatGPT to take, process, and then for me to make requests of it. And for clients, this is fairly straightforward. I don't manage the social media for any of my clients. There are some of them for whom I will generate a first pass of Facebook posts to go along with social clips, for example. But for the most part, what I'm asking ChatGPT to do is to create chapters with limitations. I will ask it to create a first pass of show notes and a title, for which I will edit and adjust myself for the audience and the language and the style that my client wants to use for whatever the podcast subject is. And something that I've found myself kind of leaning into a little bit more is trying to have it pull certain categories of content to then assemble into like trailer hooks for YouTube, or pick out 30 to 60 second verbatim clips from the transcript that are timestamped so that I can generate content for social media from that. But realistically, for me, having only done it this way for a little while, we did talk about it before, I think, but I was previously a Cast Magic user for a long time, and that is very much the pinnacle of upload, press a button, and then just copy paste the content out of it. There's no real way to adjust that stuff to your own needs. So probably for the last 5 or 6 months, I've been using ChatGPT in certain ways to generate output that is the first attempt at something creative that then goes into what would be the podcast release, or as a way to very quickly assemble, gather, organize information from the transcript of whatever episode it is to then generate the content afterwards. So it's all about time saving at the moment, and trying to get the most from the transcript that I can. But I cannot say it again enough times. At the moment, it is a dumb organizational robot for me at the moment. It has no ability to automate tasks in post in and of itself. I don't trust it enough to do that yet, and I don't believe that there's anybody that should be doing that either. But seems to be working well for me so far.
Yeah, right now, like you kept saying, first pass. That's the critical part. AI is not at a point where we should be trusting it to post for us. We still need that human in the loop to QC it, because anyone who's used ChatGPT or Gemini, those two I know for sure have really telltale words, phrases that they like to overuse. One of the things that I've seen making the rounds over the last month or two is the M dash. But please, don't think just because you see the M dash that it was necessarily written by AI. A lot of people have always used those. That's why you see it pop up in AI stuff. It's just one of those things. So that in and of itself might not be a dead giveaway. Look at the writing itself. But yeah, more than anything, we need to be able to QC it to make sure the output is what we're looking for. And you had mentioned needing to do a lot of adjusting to the show notes. Do you provide it with examples of what you're looking for, how it should be formatted for the specific client?
So that's a really good point. Something that I do for all of my clients now, when I start using ChatGPT as a way to generate content for them, is that I give it at the very beginning in a single prompt a bunch of content I've already, or that has been written for their show notes, their titles, maybe some website copy. I have it look at all of that, and then give it a bit of information about what kind of format, audience type, tone, the goal of the podcast, all of those kinds of things. I give it all of that information, as much detail as I can give it, and then I have ChatGPT generate a custom prompt from that I then put into a project as a means to address the tone, the audience delivery, the perspective that the show notes are being written and told from. Like all of those basic categorizing aspects of what you'd expect to see. Like if you described a book being, for fantasy nerds, written in the first person, etc., etc. Creating a custom prompt like that first, and then for every other prompt I do in that project, I ask it to follow the custom prompt for any information it needs, and then just do simple prompts after that, asking it for information. And I'm not sure if everybody does that. I've found that it works pretty well for me. I think having a single ChatGPT account from which I do these things means that there is sometimes a bit of drift in terms of the memory that it retains or what it thinks I'm looking for from one particular project compared to another, if I'm doing a lot of, different prompts per week in different projects. But for the most part, that structure is what I try to align to. But I don't prompt ChatGPT to refine anything, particularly for show notes or titles, if I can rewrite it myself just as easily. So I get it to hit like 60% of what I could possibly want it to be. And as long as it ticks all those boxes, then I go in and shuffle the content around, rewrite a couple of things. When it finishes off with the whether you're a this or a that, you will get a lot from this episode. Just delete that sentence and write something a little bit more enthralling,
And that's exactly why we QC it, because no matter how well we train it, there's going to be things you read and go, yeah, I wouldn't write that. Or if you train it on other stuff to try to get the voice right, it might latch onto, hey, you said this 3 times. This is a phrase you use all the time, so I'm going to start using it all the time. So AI it looks for patterns. So if it sees something like a phrase used regularly by you, and regularly might be 3 times out of 100 pages, it might say, this is something we need to use. Because at the end of the day, right now, that's all ChatGPT or LLMs are. They look for patterns. They try to match things up. Regardless of how smart they can seem sometimes, how much better they've gotten compared to 2 years ago, it's still just doing that. It's looking for patterns and predicting what should come next. They've gotten a lot better with that. So,
yes, but the thing for people to remember too is that the supervision component of that you can't ignore either. If only because they are getting better at things, it implies change. And things will change as time goes on. So you need to be there to massage things back again. Like a perfect example of what you talked about there was something that I do with a few of my clients, not all of them, but a few that are focused on teaching concepts and sharing, educational things around finance or whatever. I would ask for show notes, and then I would prompt it for the main 5 topics and a sentence description from the episode of each of those topics. Eventually, I started asking for show notes, and it would just chuck a list of topics as part of the show notes together. So I had to be like, no, don't do that. I just need the show notes, as you always have done, an episode description for the show notes, and then give me the 5 topics. So that was something that's worked for a long time. But as soon as it changed, I had to change what I give it to be able to get the things that I want, as I always have. So that supervision component is super important. You got to stay on top of it. It's going to change with you, and it will change generally as a system.
And along those lines, as it gets better at making people think it is smart. That it's not like a couple years ago when it would hallucinate, it would be really obvious. It's getting a lot smarter at how it goes about predicting everything, which can make us get a little lax in our supervision. Especially, it goes back to needing to know what a good output looks like. If we don't know what good writing looks like, as they get better, like they are now, you can look at something and say, yeah, that sounds good. I know I used AI to generate a bunch of blog content, and this was a few years ago. It was very original content. I did a lot of conversational work with it to get it where I wanted it to be, because I'm not a good writer. I thought it was fine. I look at it now and it's like, yeah, the content was good, but the writing was not great. But it's passable as a generic blog. Having worked with Tara on content creation over the last 6 months or so, I'm starting to realize that voice is really important if you want people to read your stuff. It needs to be unique and original, but it also has to have its own voice. If it sounds like everything else out there, it's probably not going to resonate with anybody. And it's probably not going to do well for SEO. And let's be honest, the only reason we're writing blogs or anything like that is for the SEO value. I don't think anybody's, at least in 2025, is writing blogs because they truly enjoy it. It's more another piece of content that we're putting out there to help us be discovered, help us do whatever it is we're trying to do with our content.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree.
And yeah,
sorry, that agreement kind of came to a dead stop.
No,
we're going to be
fine.
saying a lot of things that we both agree with, I think. The whole written content thing, like, we're probably going to talk a little bit more about it later on in depth as well. But I think that's a problem that people run into with LLMs too. Like, you feel like you've got, and the marketers, the gurus selling AI stuff as a marketing engine, your automated product so you don't have to touch anything. There's a woman who has advertised on Facebook for a while. She's still doing it. And all props to her. I've had a look at her stuff, and it seems to be like she's a really good marketer. Like, she knows what she's doing, and she's been a coach and strategist for a lot of people doing B2B marketing or whatever. But her ads are like, create 587 pieces of content in 12 hours using AI to recreate your voice. That kind of level of production, you always have to wonder how much of that voice is going to be captured that is you, and how much of that is motivated to generate as much content as possible just to have content there, as opposed to it being intentional. And we have talked a lot about audio production and video production with being intentional with the way that you create it. Maybe not as much as we'd like, because it's a very functional thing that we talk about most of the time with audio production. But being intentional with what you do is better than being everywhere all the time and just being there for the sake of being there. That's when you end up with emoji-filled AI slop floating around the internet all the time. So that intention, super important. And the value of writing as well. Having it work with you as a writer for blogs and other kinds of content, as opposed to just creating one thing and expecting it to do 27 other things from that one thing incredibly well. And there could be outliers for it. There could be incredibly well-honed LLM solutions that are incredibly expensive that can do this okay. But generally, I think if you're in the LLM space with your Geminis and your ChatGPTs, you got to put a bit of yourself in there. Bit of strategy, you know?
And going back to what you were saying about voice and how well it can capture it, I think this is one of those areas where there's a difference between knowing what you would actually write and the LLM writing something in the style that you write, where the person reading it would say, you know what, that sounds like he wrote it. Even though if we look at it, we go, yeah, I wouldn't write it this exact way. Tara, she's an author. She's put out a number of books. A couple days ago, she went into ChatGPT, write the first page of a novel in the style of Tara Kelly. She gave it some prompting to kind of recreate the first page of one of her other books. And she's reading it and asked me, and I said, to me, that sounds like something you could have written. And she's like, well, I don't think that's something I would have written. And that's where what it comes down to. When we're using it, we know exactly what we would write or how we would phrase things. The person reading it, they don't know us with that level of detail. So they're not going to read it and go, hey, that was written by AI. If it's close to your voice, that's what matters. So it's like anything else. I advocate we shouldn't be going for perfection, because if we're looking for ChatGPT to perfectly recreate our voice and write exactly like we would, I think we're losing out on a bunch of opportunities to save ourselves time because it's not perfect. Right now, AI is not perfect, but it can save us a lot of time between research, doing first drafts. I mean, there's all sorts of ways we can use automation to put some of these pieces together. And we'll get into that in a minute.
I just very quickly want to point out that the advice that you just gave about people reading, not knowing your voice 100%, is the exact same advice we gave editors who are trying to make their audio a perfect recreation of themselves. Whatever the audience, whatever the listener hears is going to be what they think you sound like. So you don't have to make it perfect. Same with exactly what you said here about your AI voice in what you create and write and put out there. People need to know enough that it's you, but it doesn't have to be exactly like you, as long as you capture your voice enough for them to recognize you. And of course, not automatically go, that was AI, just like every other AI post on the internet.
And I think for some reason the human brain is conditioned to try to compare things. It's always comparing. And I think that's falls in with what you were just saying. I talk about it when we're testing out plugins or comparing mics. Well, does one mic sound better than the other? You see that in the world of clones. Like, you get into condenser mics and you have the classic Neumann and C12 and Elam 251s, and a bunch of people and companies make clones of them. You have people comparing them. Well, how much does this clone sound like the original? And to me, I think I don't quite understand that, because does it sound like a good mic? Does it have that same kind of personality or sound profile? You see it in guitar amp modeling. Any place where you have one thing that's meant to be similar or a recreation of something else, we want to compare. And we're going to be doing the same thing with LLMs. How well does this compare to what I would do, to what I would write? And if we keep doing that, I think that's why so many people have been slow to accept AI, because there's that comparison. It can't do things as well as I can. Okay, maybe not, but can it help you save some time doing things that you're already doing? Like you said, you're using it to save time on creating assets for client work. I'm using AI to, like with these live streams, I get a transcript of the stream. And then I feed that into my prompt, which will spit out the title, description, timestamps, all of the stuff I need for YouTube. I'm fine admitting I just copy and paste that stuff. I might make a couple of changes in the description because I've been too busy or lazy to really fine-tune the prompt to get it exactly where I want. To me, making those couple of changes on a 3-line description hasn't warranted the time to go in and make those changes. But it saves time, and it's low-quality content. Nobody's really reading the description of a YouTube video for great writing. There's no reason for me to waste a bunch of time writing that stuff myself, especially the timestamps. The whole reason to do a live stream is to not have to edit it. So if I can get the timestamps, even if they're not 100% perfect, because the transcript service I use, which is Mac Whisper, it doesn't give you like word by word timestamps. So sometimes they might be a second off. Oh well. If it's not quite perfect, I apologize, but honestly, I don't have the time to go through and listen to this entire stream and make notes of where all of the timestamps should be. So I'd rather have timestamps that are in the ballpark to give the viewers timestamps so they have a better chance of going in and finding the information they want to watch, instead of, hey, here's 2 hours of us talking about whatever. Maybe there's something of value in here. Timestamps help with that. The talking points help with that. Another way we're using...
That's the split that we mentioned before, the administrative versus the creative. What you're doing is purely administrative there. Like, it's just descriptive. It's helping people learn what's happening, chapters, get quickly to the bit they're interested in. All of that you can automate. You don't have to worry about your voice so much with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, stuff like that. Stuff like editing. If you like editing words, if you write something, maybe you have AI generate a first draft. You go in, you make your changes, you give it back to the AI, or maybe you give it to another AI to get a different viewpoint on things, to get advice on how can we clean this up? How can we make this more concise? How can we make it so it's a better read for the audience? And another way I've been using AI is we record all of our meetings, so we get transcripts. And transcripts, for anybody watching this, they're pure gold. We should be trying to record everything that we do. That if we're running a business, we should be recording all of our calls with clients, all of our discovery calls, all of the calls we have with anybody about anything, because that can be extremely useful. We use it to analyze how well we performed on, say, a discovery call. Did we answer their questions well? Where can we improve on how we did things? There's so much value in those transcripts. It's a matter of really thinking outside of the box sometimes on how you can use what you have available to you. And I think that's where, if we work in a silo, all we think about is how we might be able to use something. We start hearing how other people are using things, or reading articles about, here's 100 ways you can use ChatGPT for this or that. It can help spark new ideas. And I hope that that's what we're doing here, is helping people spark some ideas of other ways AI can be used.
Yeah. And that was the biggest thing for me, moving away from Cast Magic into ChatGPT and doing the prompting myself. It's very easy, or it's very different to understand what prompting is, as opposed to trying to do it yourself and sometimes wrestle, sometimes collaborate with the LLM that you're trying to work with. It takes that practice to get that far. But once you understand what the process is like, how you can get the outputs that you want, how fast you can get them, how you need to structure your language to be able to get that far, you can't just expect it to be a one and done. We mentioned before, it adapts and changes over time, but it takes listening to other people's experiences to be able to find new ways to adapt what you do and make it better. And sometimes it's a creative change. Sometimes it's just a prompt change. Sometimes it's adding some detail. Sometimes it's removing some detail. But that practice is super important. And that's the first thing that you said on this stream. AI isn't going away. It doesn't mean that we're going to run into a heat death of the universe because it's filled with paperclips. It's because if AI is not going away, there's going to be a workflow, a methodology that we need to understand a little bit better for all things that we're doing. Like when you start a new job and you wonder who's taking the minutes of this meeting, they point you at the Fathom or the Firefly or whatever it is that's taking that transcription, and it's up to you as the new guy to take that transcription and create all of the insights from the meeting, the new actions that people should be taking, and how we can make the next meeting more efficient. That might become a core skill of someone in an administrative role in a company. But if you don't have experience with processing through LLMs a transcript, then you're going to be at a disadvantage. And that might put you on the back foot with a potential employer if you don't have that experience. And the funny thing is, getting that experience is easy because there's so many ways to do it now, so many different methods for you to practice with, that you can just try it and see. ChatGPT is currently free. It may not be free forever, or some level of it may not be free forever. Getting that practice in can be super handy.
It is. It's like we said at the beginning. It's a skill that needs practice. And looking at your example of the note takers we see in Zoom meetings all the time now. Zoom, Firefly, all of those, they tend to send you a recap of the meeting. That's all automation. But it's very similar to using something like Cast Magic. It's using very generic prompts so that it's delivering okay results each time. The power really comes in when you start automating things for yourself. Automate it so wherever that transcript goes, whether it's emailed to you or you access it from the server, you should be able to build an automation that takes that transcript, sends it into ChatGPT, processes it the way you want it processed. Because Firefly, it doesn't know what we want to take out of this meeting. They don't know what our role is in that meeting, but we do. We can prompt ChatGPT to work with that transcript to tell us exactly what we want without even having to lift a finger. And that's where the automation piece really comes into play, is we can automate a lot of these processes. So like in my example of transcribing this podcast or this live stream, the idea, not this live stream, but our business live stream, we're working on an automation that once we have the transcript, we put it into a Google Drive folder. Once it's there, that starts an automation, which analyzes the transcript, cleans it up, uploads it to a knowledge base so that we have all of our content in one place. Now the LLM can pull from that when it's writing. But after it gets uploaded to that knowledge base, it analyzes that transcript to see how can we break this down into other pieces. How many different topics did we talk about that we could write dedicated articles about? How many social media posts can we repurpose out of this? Is there anything we could use as a lead magnet in here? Is there anything we can use for newsletter content? And then it spits all of that out to different routes where, hey, we could write 3 articles here. Now we're going to do some keyword research. Then we're going to create an outline. Then we write it. Then we do a passive editing to refine it. And then we save that in a folder for us, the humans, to go through and revise. Same thing with the other elements. It goes through and creates first drafts using research, pulling out relevant data from, or relevant quotes or content from the transcript, as well as other transcripts or videos we have in our knowledge base. So it's pulling a lot of our real-world anecdotes, the things we've talked about, our knowledge, to write these articles. So it's not only writing based off of what it's been trained on and what's contained in the transcript. So there's a lot that can be done. All I do is get the transcript, move it into a folder, and come back to it later in that day. We've got 3 articles written. We've got a bunch of social media posts, content for newsletters, all ready to be gone through and QC'd, and then whatever the next step is, post it, schedule it for posting. And that's the power of the automation.
But what I'd like to point out, Jesse, and you are going to be well versed in this compared to what a lot of people are, I think, considering the research and how you've set things up so far. The biggest thing with using LLMs and AI at the moment is that the tail is wagging the dog. Like, AI came about, it wasn't solving a problem that we had already. It was a new technology to be used, and then it's being proposed as a way to solve a bunch of problems we don't have at a very, very general level. And from that perspective, we're running around with this tool trying to do things with it without a real goal for it. Like, we know we want to do things, low-level things, posts, blogs, newsletters, whatever. Let's use AI to do those things. And that's a very low-level thing. But what you described there, I would call a system. You've created a system that uses a series of tools that are AI or non-AI related to process, analyze, generate, store, do a bunch of actions for you to arrive at a series of outcomes, you solving the problem that you have of both having content that you don't have time to process yourself and using it as a first step to then create the content that you can use to generate leads or whatever it is you need to do. That's a system that sits on top of whatever tools are required underneath to make it happen. And I think too many people, in content creation at least, they don't think about their system. They think about a thing they want and throw as many tools at it as they can to get at that thing. So intention, strategy, supervision, adaptation, all these are things that measure into a system that is not entirely abstracted or mutually exclusive to, but is a layer on top of that organizes all the things underneath. So the AI, you want it to do a certain thing. You need a system in place for you to organize the aspects of that to have it make sense so that when something changes, you can take out an aspect of that system that a tool meets and then replace it with something else to make sure that you can continue to achieve whatever you're doing. Like what I said, when ChatGPT changes the outputs that I get, I have to adjust my system of prompts to be able to arrive at what I got before in exactly or better or, kind of similar to what I had before so the system can continue moving. Similar for you, there's going to be an aspect of that system that changes. Maybe Google Drive changes its API connections to certain automation tools that allow you to extract from one tool to another to generate a database. You have to replace that tool with something else to be able to continue generating and storing the content between applications. But you're not going to be sitting there saying, oh no, ChatGPT changed. Now my life is over. I have to start from scratch again. You have your system, so you're going to be looking for a solution to mitigate the change to that system to be able to appropriately do the things that you've continued to do over time. And the systems may change over time. But what content creators need, I think, is a system. They have to think about what their system is like for content creation and how AI contributes to that. And what you described is a system. I think if nothing else, people should be listening to exactly what you said there, thinking about what they do in their workflow and process for themselves and how they could create a similar system for themselves. This isn't the Jesse McCune 7 steps to content creation success. $99 on Facebook ads right now. It's thinking on another level, the tools you use to be able to create a workflow that makes sense, that allows you to generate the output you want, and allows you to be adaptive to as the technology changes over time. Systems thinking. It's the way to go.
And really, when you think about it, that's what SaaSes are. They're systems. Look at Cast Magic. It's a system built for content creators. The difference is it's built for content creators. It's not built for me. It's not built for you. It's not built for whoever's watching. That's where I really think the future is. You can either buy all of these different subscriptions that do one thing for you, but nothing else, and none of them are really customized to what you want. Or you could spend a little bit of money and hire someone or take the time to learn how to build these systems for yourself that are customized and tailored to your exact needs. That's what I did with the system we're talking about. We have these business live streams. We want to repurpose them. We want to streamline that process as much as possible because we don't have a whole lot of time for creating all of this unique content. But we have a couple of hours a week we can set aside to do a live stream. This is how we can go about that. And I see online all the time people talk about, here's a prompt I'm using and I'm really happy with it. We've talked about prompting, so I think this is a really good place to talk about, kind of show what we're talking about. Let me find where I have that set up.
So any posts that we talk about like this, one of the first objections will be that it is a post that exists for longer than the time it was made and potentially beyond the scope of which it was posted chronologically, that it cannot apply over time. Things have to be adapted and supervised. But yeah, do you want to go through what you got there?
This, I found, we alluded to this post last week. It's meant to be helpful, and a lot of people did find it helpful. In my mind, this is an okay prompt, but it leaves a lot to be desired. So, this is in the context of Riverside and taking a transcript and creating content using whatever their LLM of choice is. And here's what it is. Please process the episode transcript with the following tasks. Write a compelling summary of the episode. Create detailed timestamps with segment titles. List key topics or themes discussed. Provide a list of resources or external links mentioned. Suggest a catchy human-sounding title. Propose a YouTube thumbnail concept. Original or optional, generate the image. Provide a comma-separated list of keywords for SEO. Write a short social media post to promote the episode. And identify 5 good sections for YouTube Shorts, 1 to 1.5 minutes, and flag any that could go up to 3 minutes, but not over. So there's a good amount of detail in here, but it's still, in my mind, very bland. What's your take?
I looked at this shopping list of things that it asks ChatGPT to do. Let's say that you're getting your weekly beef, salad, cheeses, getting your Coke, going for a pasta from the shelf. If there's one week where you're going somewhere else for dinner and then you end up buying too much on the shopping list, or maybe you get sick of making that meal every week and you need to make an adjustment to the shopping list. And when you go to the supermarket, look for maybe a bit of pork or a bit of lamb. If you're shopping list is a one and done and you can't change it in the way that this has been put together, it makes it really hard to make an adjustment down the line if you want to change something, or if what you get is bad on the other side. Probably a very poor kind of analogized version of what we're looking at here, but it's what I thought of it as. And sometimes I think this is where people get confused about prompt chaining. It's not necessarily chaining a bunch of prompts together, but chaining a bunch of actions. I think what the person who wrote this could benefit from a little bit more is being able to doing every one of these steps individually over time to test and see what it outputs. And this is the problem with seeing posts like this one as well. It says that they do a thing, but it may not describe the entire thing. So what I'm saying right now, saying that whatever this outputs right now isn't going to be good every single time, could be wrong in terms of their own context. They might be saying, well, you didn't read this right. I do these 9 steps individually. This isn't just a single transcript that I take the entire output of and just copy paste elsewhere. I actually look at it. But the post didn't say that. We have to take the post context for what it is. And that's what I see it as. A series of very generic, non-specific steps that don't address the unique things about the podcast itself to create the content that would then go beyond the level of just AI slop emojied nonsense that we can all recognize. I think that's the big miss for me.
Alejandro, I see your question. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But the thing I see with this is because it lacks some detail in the instructions, I would expect it to kind of vary from one run to the next. And we've got on this next one, this came out of an AI newsletter that was more or less summarizing Anthropic's recently released AI course or something along those lines. But it talks about the 4D framework in a nutshell. Delegation. Get strategic about what to give the AI versus what to do yourself. This involves understanding your project's goals, problem awareness, and the AI's strengths and weaknesses. The platform awareness. So when we look at that original prompt, we need to think about what parts are we going to do? What parts is the AI going to be good at doing? Description. This is prompt engineering on steroids. It's about clearly communicating what you want, how the AI should approach it, and how it should behave. Going back to the prompt, it's not really telling it how to behave, or it's just giving it basic instructions. But it's not telling the AI how to approach it or how it should behave. Discernment. This is the critical flip side of description. Anthropic says to learn to evaluate the AI's output, its reasoning, and its conversational style to ensure quality. This goes into what you were saying. You don't want this to just be a one and done thing. It needs to be an iterative process. And diligence. This is the ethics and responsibility layer. It covers choosing the right AI for the job, being transparent about its use, and taking ownership of the final result. That really comes into play when you're using AI for client work. They need to know that their content is being fed into AI. They should have the option to opt out of that if they don't want it. Yes, there should be a price increase if they don't want AI used on their content. But if we're using paid accounts, usually, at least with Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini, the paid accounts generally aren't being trained on what you put into it. The free accounts, everything is being used to train on your data. But if we look at this and go back to our original prompt, you can see it's not meeting all of those best practices. So what would it look like if we tweaked this prompt to make it better? So this is the beginning of the prompt. Generate podcast assets. You are a senior podcast producer and social media strategist with a knack for creating engaging content that drives listenership. Your tone is professional yet punchy and engaging. Your goal is to process the provided podcast episode or podcast episode transcript and generate a complete set of... Sorry, I'm bouncing back and forth. And generate a complete set of marketing and production assets based on the background information below. And this part of the prompt should be probably included in the main instructions of a project. That way you don't have to paste this in each time. But actually the background information is going to change a little bit from episode to episode, but you've got your podcast name, host name or names, your guest name or guests' names, your primary audience, and the core theme of the episode. This tells the AI what your show is about, who your audience is, and what you're talking about, so it has a better understanding before it even looks at your transcript. Does this all make sense?
I'm loving all of this. I think if you're thinking of clipping this show for something else to go on the Tanziasta Academy YouTube channel, I think you should start at the 4Ds and continue from this point, because it's all the good stuff. I completely agree with all of this.
Okay, moving on to the next part. We've got tasks. Using the background information in the transcript below, perform the following tasks. Please structure your response with clear headings for each item. 1. Episode summary. Write an episode summary of approximately 150 to 200 words. The tone should be intriguing and engaging, designed to make a new listener want to click play. End with a compelling question for the reader. And the tone, that can always be changed up depending on what style you're going for. And whatever you want the summary goal to be. This is just a pretty basic example, and it's going to work pretty well. Number 2, episode titles. Suggest 5 catchy, human-sounding titles. Include a mix of styles. One that is a direct, intriguing quote from the guest. One that is a question. One that clearly states the episode's main topic, like John Smith on the art of negotiation. 2 creative/abstract options. Again, we're giving detail. We're giving examples of what we're looking for, as opposed to write 5 human-sounding episode titles.
So just to pause there for a sec, you've explained this already, but just to elaborate on it a little bit more. If you're looking at this and wondering why that level of detail is necessary, and that you can't just say, make a title for the episode that I would like, and click on and enjoy. Any kind of cognition you're asking the LLM to do is not going to work in a predictive way like you want it to every single time. Like the goal, what Jesse's outlining here is a series of prompts that are predictable, that outline exactly what you want to get an output that you could choose from that will align to what you're looking for. And it removes I use the word cognition, but only to say, like we've described it as a predictive model that only gives back what you tell it to do. So if you give it nothing to do without the constraints or boundaries for it to work in, then it's not going to give you what you expect every single time. So the more detail you add about how much it should work with, what it should be, how it should output this stuff. All those constraints are exhaustive every single time that you have to write them, but the output will be more reliable. You won't have to supervise and change and adjust and draft every single time you put in a single sentence prompt for something that you want that's a little bit more complicated than that. Having something like this templated every single time, because I do something very similar to this as well, that eliminates what we would describe as choice for the LLM. You don't want to give it choice. It's not a cognition platform. It's a predictive platform. It's analysis. It outputs based on instruction. That's why we are supervisors to dumb interns, and why I'd usually describe it like that. So if this feels like a lot, it's not. This is what you should be looking at to structure your own prompts and create that system we talked about, the predictive output that you can adapt and change for yourself over time, regardless of the tool you used. Sorry, that feels like me taking credit for the work that you've done here, but
no, not at all.
So good.
It's always good to have someone else come in and give some insights into things, because I'm really close to it. I understand everything, but it's good having someone who can explain it from a different perspective on why this works. And it's like you said, AI is a dumb intern/new hire. It doesn't know what you want or what you need. And if you just tell it to give it a list of 9 things without instruction, go do this, I don't know what to do. So I'm just going to guess at what you want for all of these different things. Hopefully I give you what you want, but chances are I'm not. And that's on you.
Yep. There's actually there's an exercise that is for like elementary school children as an introduction to programming and organizing instructions. It's called the jam sandwich activity. People can look it up and they'll see exactly what I mean by bringing it up here, because it covers exactly what we're talking about. The idea is someone's at the front of the room with a bag of like a loaf of bread, a jar of jam, a knife, a cutting board, and the teacher is the person with that stuff. They ask the children, okay, I need to make a jam sandwich. What do I do? And they say, take the bread and put it down so that you can put the jam on it. So they pick up the loaf in the bag, put it on the cutting board, and then put the jar of jam on top of the loaf. And they say, I've done it, right? And they're like, no, you need to take the bread out. Oh, okay. So the instructions need to be remove 2 slices of bread and place them on the cutting board to etc., etc. That's the kind of thing very similar to what we're describing here. If you don't give it the explicit instructions that you want it to give you at the end, you don't end up with a jam sandwich. You end up with a loaf of bread and a jar of jam. You're currently muted.
And we're definitely not looking for a bottle of jam on top of a package of bread.
That's the AI slop we see on social media at the moment.
Yep. So now we've done the first 2. We've got 3, 4, and 5. Detailed timestamps. Create a list of timestamps with segment titles. Add a new timestamp for every major topic shift, new story, or significant question. Use the format HHMMSS - descriptive segment title. It's telling the LLM what format to use and how to identify when it should create a timestamp and chapter title or segment title. Number 4, key topics. List the 5 to 7 most important topics or themes discussed in the episode as concise bullet points. Number 5, resources mentioned. Provide a bulleted list of all books, articles, tools, or other external resources mentioned in the transcript. If no links are provided, simply list the names. This tells it explicitly what to do if no links were actually mentioned, but maybe we mentioned an app or a book or some other article or tool. it tells it to at least list the name so we have that in our show notes, or that we can include in the show notes or go and pull the links to add in. And then we've got the conclusion of the prompt. YouTube thumbnail concepts, 2 options. Propose 2 distinct concepts for a YouTube thumbnail. For each, describe the visuals, what image should be used. Example, host and guest, an abstract graphic. Text overlay, what short, high-impact text should be on the thumbnail. Something like, this changes everything, their biggest mistake. Mood and colors, what is the overall feeling? Energetic, serious, mysterious. SEO keywords, provide a comma-separated list of 15 to 20 keywords for SEO. Include a mix of broad, short tail, and specific niche, long tail keywords. Social media promotion, Twitter post. Write a post under 280 characters, tag the guest if their handle is known, include 3 to 4 relevant hashtags. LinkedIn, Facebook post, write a longer post, 2 to 3 paragraphs that introduces the topic, highlights a key takeaway, and encourages discussion in the comments. Number 9, potential YouTube shorts, 5 clips. Identify 5 high-impact sections, 60 to 90 seconds, ideal for YouTube shorts or social media clips. For each, provide the timestamp, clip title or hook, a catchy title for the clip, justification, a brief explanation of why it's a good clip, something like strong emotional hook, actionable advice, controversial statement, funny anecdote, and 3-minute flag. If any of these clips could be extended up to 3 minutes for a standard YouTube clip, please flag it with and then extendable to 3 minutes. So that is how we could take a pretty plain prompt, give it the detail to provide much better results from the LLM that are going to be more predictable.
Yep. And one of the key things that we haven't necessarily talked about yet is the AI component that is offered from a number of places. Like Riverside has its magic clips, Opus AI also does clips. The basic idea is that prompt that you had at the end there, YouTube clips. Pull 5 ideal clips according to certain criteria and constraints and give them to me with verbatim timestamps and tell me why they're important and why I should include them. That's just one step before what all the other platforms do with the same thing, but they also pull the video for you and cut it together and slap some captions on. You have the capacity to do that yourself with a platform manually. And if you don't want to have one of those AI services or use them, or if you find it's too unwieldy and time-consuming for it to pull the data themselves, then you can use the language to do this. And that's one of the most useful ways to think about your approach to prompting for LLMs as well, is that anything it gives you is going to be in language. It's going to presume that it can give you more stuff, like you might do the YouTube thumbnail concept, and it will ask you, after it gives you all those ideas, it'll say, would you like us to create that for you? Or create a design document that illustrates the construction and design of these elements so that you have a brief for your social media designer or your, artistic collaborator or whatever. But it's always going to output language because it's a predictive language model. So anything that you want to get out of the transcript or whatever that text is, if you can describe it with written words, then you can constrain, prompt, and ask the AI to give it to you in some way. And part of the reason that I love that myself is that anything that we do is done with language. We may get to the aphantasia stage of things again, Jesse, where you have trouble visualizing things when you hear them or when you think of them. But almost everything we do requires language to be able to consider it or think about it. So it's kind of it's making some lighter decisions for us to accelerate and speed up whatever we do. It's like a flywheel into whatever we want to create, because we'd be doing the thinking internally anyway. When you're sitting there thinking, what kind of thumbnail can I create that will be optimal for this episode? Start with a couple of these, and then you'll have better ideas off the back of that. Or these will be perfect and you'll just create them yourself. The creation is still on you, but you're using the language to do it. And language being a core component of everything we do, if you can focus it on that, then it makes things a whole lot easier. The thing that I would worry about people relying on platforms like OpenAI or Riverside to generate this stuff is that they don't understand that core concept, that the language at the bottom of everything is what's driving all of the content upwards. I don't know how to, exclaim that and then move on to whatever we're going to move on to next. But that's the biggest thing. The language is the biggest thing. And if you can describe it, then you can get it.
Exactly. And one of the other things before we move on is it goes back to thinking about the bigger picture. You can tell this was created by someone who was just looking at, how can I save time promoting my podcast? You've got a transcript from an episode. You're a content creator. If this is the only way you can think to use that content to help yourself, you're missing a lot of opportunities, because social media, that doesn't tend to help you grow. You're just showing it to people who already know you. I see this, I think, you've got a podcast episode. At the very least, you should be converting that into a blog or an article you can put on your website at a minimum. Depending on how long the episode is, what kind of content is covered, you might be able to generate a couple of articles out of that. So we need to think beyond just, okay, this is what I do, and think, how else can I use the tools available to me to do more than I was able to do if I was just doing it by myself? And that goes back to the 4 Ds and thinking in terms of, what should I do? What can I have the LLM do? And thinking about what else can be done, because we've always been limited by our own limitations, whether that's time, knowledge. We're always butting up against our limitations. AI can help us push past those limitations. So we need to reframe how we think about things to account for that. And we've got a question from Alejandro. Can we train AI to help with the SEO for the show that goes on YouTube mainly? Probably.
I think you had a step in there that kind of, is the first step, right? You had, give us some SEO keywords, long form, short form, whatever it might be, that you would attach to this transcript. Like, that'd be a starting point, right?
That would be, but I think this is looking at it from the wrong end of the process. If we want to use SEO for a show that goes mainly on YouTube, that should be done during the pre-production side. Do the research for SEO, what types of topics the audience might be wanting to find. All of that should be done beforehand. That should go into informing the creator on what the episode should be. And it really goes back to my biggest advice for audio podcasters who move to YouTube. You have to change your approach. because if you want to capitalize on YouTube's algorithm and searchability and discoverability, you need to really change how you go about planning and producing your show. Maybe not producing, but at least the planning, so that you can create something that is going to be SEO friendly. Does that make sense, Alejandro?
And I think if you want a bit more detail on that, we did talk about that last week in a little bit of detail, I think. So refer to the very directed chapters that Jesse, I'm sure, generated for last week's live stream. And you should be able to find a little bit of that conversation there as well. You're muted again, my friend.
I'm good at that. But Alejandro also mentioned earlier that our sound is coming in too low. And the thing to keep in mind, Alejandro, is there's no post-production here. Trying to get audio of a live stream up to the same loudness as other videos on YouTube, that's going to take a lot of processing in real time that generally doesn't exist. So, sorry, but that's what the volume dial's for. If we're coming in a little quiet, as long as we're similar in volume, just turn it up a little bit and remember to turn it back down when you're done. I find a lot of the stuff on YouTube to be too loud. I find -16 LUFS to be too loud. I hope nobody's pushing dialogue to -14. That's just brutal. I wish we could get, I don't know, closer to -20, 21 LUFS. That seems to be a better solution for dialogue, less limiting in terms of having to apply brick wall limiters to bring up the loudness. But that's really not related to AI. That's more us audio geeks geeking out on audio. So,
that's it.
Sorry if we're coming in a little bit low. Honestly, I can't go any louder without clipping because I'm already in the yellow, almost maxed out. So, there's not much more volume I can give.
Yeah, as long as we're kind of the same. That's the important part. Like, you don't want to hear awesome stuff from Jesse and then have me be really quiet and really super far away, and you can't even, and you have to ride that volume knob the entire time. Like, as long as we're relatively the same, and you remember in the 5 to 10 seconds YouTube recommends another video or Facebook recommends another video to you, that you just jack that volume down a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good place to wrap things up.
Yeah.
For me, the key takeaways are we have to remember AI is a dumb new hire. It doesn't know your company. It doesn't know its job. You need to tell it specifically what its job is and what it is you're looking for. What's going to be a good output. That's where those 4 Ds come into play. And we can't just let AI do its thing and think it's going to be perfect and ready for release or publication. As of right now, we still need that human in the loop to verify and check the work.
And the human is an important part of every aspect of this, right? We're creating content for humans. If a human can figure out a human didn't make it, that's going to affect that human's experience too. So make sure there's a human for every single part of this process, and you've got the end in mind. And you'll create the kind of content that you want to see on the internet.
And make sure it's not generic. Like we talked about with the system I'm building. We're pulling in all kinds of our own knowledge in our own words into the stuff we're creating. That helps us write articles that are going to do better for SEO because it's more unique, original content. Right now, Google doesn't care if it was generated by AI completely or in part or not at all. They're looking for good quality, engaging content. They don't care how it's produced as of right now.
Yep. And perhaps the one last thing, we're going to have a yes and for almost every single aspect of this. But the other thing that I thought of, we've talked a lot about what the administrative stuff that outputs, like the dumb intern, generating things that you just don't have time to do. There will come a time where it can start to infer what your thinking is and do its own thinking and put that working in place, or create a story that's entirely emergent and engaging. When we get to that stage of AI, it's going to be very interesting. But if you want those kinds of things from AI-generated content, then you need to go about it in a very intentional way. And you need to make sure that you're a collaborator with it and not just, the part of the reason it comes to mind is because of the type of podcast I'll be making for podcasters from now on. It has a very philosophical bent to it. And I wouldn't ask an LLM to generate a philosophical argument around the ethics of an aspect of podcasting and show that argument working like you would expect from Jean-Paul Sartre or Socrates or something. I would want to do that myself and have the AI support the writing of that in an administrative fashion to arrive at the output that I would want to see.
That makes perfect sense. Not really another and, a little bit unrelated, but self-promotion. Mm-hmm. If you need help building a system for yourself or understanding how you might be able to utilize AI or really probably automation into your workflow to save time, that's what I'm here for. I offer AI consulting. I can build these types of systems for you. It really depends on what you're looking for, how much time you're willing to invest in it, and what you're looking to achieve. So you can reach me at bbremix.com or tansiaster.com, Tansiaster Academy, wherever. I'm easy to be found. And Matt, you already did some self-promotion. Do you have any last words before we sign off, other than you're going to be out of town for a while?
Yes, that's true. I will be visiting my home country of Australia for the next 4 to 5 weeks. So you may not see me for a little bit, but if you want to hear me, Rethinking Podcasting, search it on your podcast player, mbpod.com if you're interested in looking at my portfolio of work for production. And an idea for you, Jesse, I think you should create a course on acceptable use of the M-, because you have a very staunch M- advocate on your team that seems like they'd be able to inform the world very accurately and adeptly where the M- should come in.
Yes, Tara is a big M- user, and
big fan.
We could probably do a whole thing about that. In terms of the live stream, I'm not sure. I haven't figured out or had the time to figure out what I'm going to do while Matt's out of town. I'm not sure if I'll just put the live streams on hold, or I might use that time to create original content for the channel instead. I'll figure it out, and either you'll see more unique videos being uploaded over the next month or so, or you're going to see some live streams. I'll be around one way or another. Thanks for watching.
Where can they submit questions in the case that you would like some content for live streams?
If you can't be here in person, we love it when you are able to, but we know, given the time, not everybody can. You can go to tansiasteracademy.com/ask-a-question and ask them there. You can do all sorts of things there. You can provide audio and video questions. You can provide samples of audio to get advice on. It's not just for the live streams. It's there to help and also give me ideas for videos to create. So use that link. It helps.
I'm really looking forward to a session we can do in future where we listen to, road test, and critique people's audio. That would be very interesting, technologically and live streamingly, whatever.
Something like that.
Anyway,
we're running out of the ability to speak properly, so we're just going to say thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See you in a little bit.
Bye.